Good morning, everybody. John Sviokla here with the Gen AI news briefing, rating the top news of essential, important, or optional articles for our AI leader. Today, we have 6 fantastic articles that range from a new way to teach models down through whether or not Apple is paying for ChatGPT. All right, with that, Ankash, could you start us off with the first article, please?
Sure, John. Just waiting my screen to be up.
Go ahead, David. Are you going to put the screen up? There we go.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one that we have for today comes from Apple and OpenAI, and it talks about how Apple is not paying OpenAI for ChatGPT through cash, but through distribution.
Thanks. David, can you start us off with this guy?
I sure can. I'm slapping an optional on this one because I don't know that it's necessarily super relevant to the AI leader, especially since this is a bit of consumer play, though granted, as um, Adam pointed out when we talked about Apple earlier this week, 60% of the mobile devices in the enterprise are Apple. But basically, it's the article says what the title says, right? So Apple is putting ChatGPT on phones as an option. And recall, when you activate it, you would be notified, which is good feature and part of Apple's um, privacy measures that they're very known for and big on. It's interesting, right? OpenAI, while they could make money off of this through people buying subscriptions after being exposed to ChatGPT on the iPhone, it's also more expensive for them to run it, right? Because more people will be using it. So TBD, right? Whether the opportunity will pay for itself in the end. And according to the article, Apple is also talking to Google about offering Gemini. They're talking to Anthropic about offering Claude. So they're going to be giving people options over time. ChatGPT won't be the only game in town on the Apple iPhone, and of course, Apple has its own smaller on-device LLMs that are doing a lot of the work. So interesting structure. Obviously, OpenAI is trying to continue their push into the consumer market. And now another note too is when they do sell the subscriptions, although the article says they can't really confirm this, typically, as you know, Apple takes 30% of any purchases in an app, so they might not even be getting full payment for it, although again, we don't know that. So interesting that they took this route, but I'd say optional for the AI leader.
All right, we have an optional. Paul?
The only other thing I'd offer, let's be really clear. I don't think Apple offered to pay and OpenAI said no. So, Apple pays billions to Google, and this is a hedge play. But I think from the AI leader, we talked about it a few days ago, this is going to be fantastic for educating employees throughout the organization that use the Apple phone. But certainly...
Well, it's actually the opposite, actually, Paul. Google pays Apple to be the search option.
I'm sorry. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was.
But it's exclusive, David. It's an exclusive. They pay for the exclusive search.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, I thought this was optional as well for our leader. Certainly speaks to the market power of Apple. Anything else to add here? All right, optional it is. Next, Ankaj.
Okay, the next one comes from Lemony. So they have introduced a new memory tuning technique which can improve LLM accuracy by 95% and reduce hallucinations by 10x.
All right, Adam, what do you think of this one?
So straight up, I rated this as important. I was hesitant at first because it is in many ways research, but Lemony, I did a little digging. They April of last year, so well over a year ago, got 25 million in funding. They have blog articles about use cases with Fortune 500 companies, although they don't specify whom. So this is definitely in market. It's not something that's just in theory. And both the accuracy they're describing as well as the reduction of cost is quite significant and quite a breakthrough, as I can tell. Just a little more color to that. They have what they call expert adapters, and basically what they do is they fine tune a model, but they create what they call experts that are places within the model that have agency over a set of facts. So there might be an expert that specializes in this case, as they describe, the Roman Empire, and they might have an expert that specializes in SQL database schemas. And then they leverage the large language model to then choose which of these expert adapters they want to then call on to draw from and get the expertise they need to get very accurate answers very quickly, very low cost, and with very few hallucinations. So the model they describe, they call it MOME. I'm not sure if you'd say MOME or MOME, but it's so that's a mixture of memory experts, and it looks like it could be quite a significant breakthrough.
And Adam, why important, not essential? This seems like a really serious breakthrough.
The reason was just because it's such a niche. It's this one company, and people would pretty much have to go with them at this point to leverage the benefit of it. I looked a little deeper, and it's not like some of this research where just once people understand the concept, anyone can sort of cross that moat and grab it and apply it to ChatGPT or Mistral or another model. So it's important that they understand that this capability is there, but it's not something I feel that has a broad enough reach yet in terms of all of enterprise being accessible to it.
Yeah, Luda,
I know John disagreed with me though, so it's a good question. Yeah,
I would push it into essential. It's really impactful breakthrough, and as you said, you can actually implement it, even though this is just one vendor. This will escalate, I think.
I'm going to put us all over the map. I was optional on this one for a couple of reasons. One, just the way that the article was written. I don't know if you can call it research. It was written as like a rah-rah press release, which for me made it a little unappealing. But here's my argument for optional. What's the difference for a company if an LLM is 95% accurate versus 75% accurate operationally? You still have to check the answers with any inaccuracies, right? So until someone says they're 100% accurate, to me, it feels like, yes, it's great that it'll serve up more answers, but I mean, number one, that actually introduces more risk, because if it's right 9 out of 10 times, how much is someone going to check for that one time that it's wrong, which could be significant? So I went with optional on this one.
Boy, Adam, I think there are tons of functions in organizations that operate well below 95%, like customer service. I'd be willing to bet customer service is wrong 5% of the time or more. And you get the labor productivity and you get the ability to tune it up more. So I think I hear you. There's certain things that have to be 100%, but there's tons of things in organizations that are mostly there, especially in our category of wins work. So and it's not going to stop at 95%. I mean, it's a whole new model of taking, they're using the Loma tuning, and it's a whole new model of creating little pockets of expertise in and around the model. I think I'd make a case for essential, and it also drives the critical things that people care about, accuracy and cost.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say go ahead, Luda.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Adam.
Oh, I was just going to say the 95 versus 75% is only one part of the equation. The other two significant breakthroughs are in both the speed and the cost.
Yeah.
So the accuracy is one thing, but it's not the only thing that's really on the table here.
It's introducing a method that goes fundamentally at one of the huge problems, quote unquote, in LLMs, in ChatGPT, right? We tried prompts, we tried RAG, and it's kind of working, but not working, and that's what the article points out. The memory retention is the critical function. Yeah, it's only 95%, but if you read the cases they tried it on, some of them 100%. So it will get there. It's just going at suggesting a method that we haven't seen before. It's a breakthrough. So
Yeah.
we can't not tell our executives that this is happening.
And I agree with you, David. The article, it's got something to be desired in terms of how it's written. But maybe if we put in the research paper, which is not bad, it's also in there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna. This is a fun one. It's really spreading the opinions here. I'm gonna go for essential, and let's include the research paper underneath as well as something that our AI leader should read. Okay.
Let's riot, David.
All right, we're going for the next article, please. It's interesting. Ashish and Michael seem to think it's super important, and Mauricio's optional. So here we go. All right, U.S. Air Force seeks generative AI test pilots. Luda, where are we on this?
When I read,
I'm sorry, I stepped over Ankash. Ankash, go ahead. Sorry.
No worries, John. This one talks about an experimental chatbot called NIPR GPT, which was used first time this week, and what the Air Force is doing with it.
Thank you, Ankash. Sorry about that. Luda.
yeah, the person who wrote the article produced a really good title, because I said, "What? Are we flying planes with it?" But then when you read about it, it's actually using completing tasks and experimental chatbot to and not confined environment. So it's actually great. I'm applauding the Air Force to be using it, training the folks to do more significant things. So good. I think they believe in this technology. They're experimenting with it. This is wonderful, but optional.
All right, we got a vote for optional here.
I wondered if they're actually calling it Nipper.
I didn't know how to pronounce that thing either. Yeah, I thought the article was all. This is a great example of a non-article article. I mean, it kept pointing to things that had no facts underneath. So, God love the person who put it together as a way to put something in print.
Just
all
a
right.
quick note, though, that they are using a on-premise application of LLMs, not using any of the big cloud players to do what they're doing.
Yes.
Well, and that makes sense.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, we're going for an optional on this one. Ankaj, next.
Yes. So the next one comes from BT. So they have rolled out a GenAI developer tool from Amazon, so which was called Code Whisperer earlier. Now it's Amazon Q developer tool.
All right, we got the big Q being rolled out here. Seems like a pretty promotional piece, but what do you think, David?
Yeah, I was actually on the border of important just for one reason. So this is obviously British Telecom, $16 billion company. And they've chosen Amazon Q, which we haven't heard about a lot, right? Many companies are using Copilot or GitHub's tool and some other ones. The reason why I wanted to note this was just to make leaders aware that they're using Amazon Q and seem to be quite happy with it. There's some statistics in here. So we constantly see the statistic, and I know it came out of McKinsey, BCG, a couple other studies where developer time is, kind of almost halved, right? This one actually says they got 13% of their tasks automated, which is obviously significantly lower, but they're still very pleased with it. The article also discusses kind of what they see as like the sweet spot for developers who use this, which is not the very inexperienced, because you need to know if the tool is getting something incorrect, and not the super experienced. And they discuss some of the ways that they're using the tool is for kind of helping to cut back on time, looking at documentation on how to do things. And, so that middle layer is kind of where they're seeing the most improvement in timing from a developer perspective. So, the news that this particular company is not of note for an AI leader, but I just thought, given that we haven't seen a lot about how people are finding Amazon Q to be, and some of those stats and information, to me, I thought it was potentially worth calling important.
No, potentially. Are you calling it important? Or are you calling it optional?
I'm calling it important.
Okay, important it is. All right, we got a vote for important here. We're helping the mediocre get better. And what other folks think?
I think David is right. Important it is. I was on the optional and important. I think it's worth putting a good test case up that says, look, we experimented with small group of volunteers. Now we're rolling it out broadly to 1,200 or whatever their developer base is, the whole developer base. And they are seeing a tremendous engagement from the base. So a lot of fear out there to release this stuff, right? Because they think people will say, my job is going, blah, blah, blah. And this is going opposite that. And I like this article for that reason, to say, look, and it points out that it's certainly helpful to more junior developers versus senior developers. But I bet you the junior developers accelerate in their expertise much faster because they can see and experiment with code that is on their task. So I really think that we should mark it as important.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you say the junior developers. I think there's a subtlety there that David pointed out, which is it's not the junior developers. They won't even give them access to it until they're a particular level of proficiency, which I thought was interesting. So fun. But yes, I was thinking important as well because of it's a good case study with a fair amount of facts, and people standing behind what the productivity statistics are. So as something for our AI leader to have in their back pocket. Adam, I know you went for optional on this thing in the early going. You okay if we go?
Yeah, I think I'm being swayed. This is a good discussion. Yeah.
Sounds good. We're going for important. Next.
Okay. The next one comes from Bendigo and Adelaide Bank Partners, Adelaide Bank, and they have partnered with MongoDB to modernize their core banking technology using GenAI.
Yes, and this is obviously a press release from MongoDB, very promotional, interesting domain here. Adam, what'd you think?
Another Aussie bank in the AI news.
Another Aussie bank, yeah, baby.
I was at first I was thinking optional because it is a bit of a press release as well as it's a specific use case in a fairly niche. I mean, not that financial is niche, but just an application within that vertical. But as I looked at it more, I was actually leaning towards important, and I think I'm giving it an important rating because it extends beyond just what this bank is doing. It really alludes to some of the ways that you can leverage generative AI for doing modernization efforts, which is an important thing, not just in banking, but in a lot of industries. And for them to have done at least what they say for 1/10 of a traditional legacy to cloud migration for 1/10 the cost, that's a significant amount. And there's some very specific examples in there of how they leverage generative AI to streamline things, to automate things. So I think it's worth a read, and I consider it important.
Yeah, especially around energizing the data that are there, right? The ability to take a relational database and through Gen AI be able to make it available to other microservices and so forth.
It's a point, Adam. I rated it as optional, but you just hit a good point. There's a lot of software debt. And some software out there in enterprises is COBOL based, and there are no developers almost left who understand that stuff, and it needs to be ported to more contemporary databases and infrastructures. So it is important to state that now with these new tools that can be done and can be done maybe faster, and you don't necessarily need the developers to do it. Well, you do, but not that many. So yeah, I'm okay. I'm actually important now.
Yeah, interesting. David and I are involved in a case study that we're doing for one of our clients, and this whole issue, I might even allude to say data debt, not just software debt, that there's a tremendous amount of locked up data, and to use generative AI to be able to unlock that data. David, I was thinking of our friends at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. What do you think?
Yeah, as much as I hate recommending people to read press releases, I also I wish that there was a reporter that wrote on this topic instead of that we can refer someone to. But I agree that I thought the use case was interesting and the results were impressive. So I'm on the important camp.
Well, it's got to be a good thing for David to go important on a press release, I'll tell you. Okay, Michael Novak also says, hey, look, there's a quote in this thing. It wasn't a co-pilot, actually rewrote the app. How about that? Created
You might want to consider actually reaching out to them and getting even more information and potentially sharing it with the audience, because I think it's that compelling.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Awesome. So we're going to rate that baby as important. Ankaj, next, please.
Okay. The next one comes from Mars. Yeah. And it highlights how it is using Gen AI in product development and personalization.
Yes, M&M Mars, the Mars brothers, two very, very wealthy older gentlemen run this privately held enterprise, selling sugar to us all in a beautiful format. Okay. Luda, what'd you think of this one?
I rated it as important. It's a tremendous test case or use case. I was waiting for an article to be on product development. This generates concepts or product concepts, 50 per day. I mean, imagine that, right? And it also goes at mass personalization that know is holy grail, right? At a good cost. So it's a very interesting article. I think for CPG, it's essential almost to, and they probably all are doing the same thing, I hope. But it is an interesting article that I think is worth a read.
Interesting article, worth a read. Okay, yes. When I said gaming interactions, I wasn't sure if they were talking about gaming with the environment for experimenting with the brand, or they were inserting ideas into games. Anyway, but fascinating, right? Here we have consumer packaged goods company, looking into this. What do you think, David or Adam?
I was optional on this one. I thought it was kind of light on details, and yeah, great that you have 50 product ideas. Like, what do those look like? Are they are they of actual quality that they're pursuing, or is it just random garbage, or the subject of a meme or something? And then what they were talking about in terms of advertising, to me, just kind of felt like stuff that you already do today to personalize ads. It wasn't really specific exactly how generative AI was like playing a role in that personalization. So I went with optional on this one.
Gotcha. Adam, where'd you land?
I agree with Luda in terms of why it's important. I also agree with David in terms of that they didn't get into the details of how they actually executed on those use cases. And so it brings an important thing to light, but the article sort of left me wondering how. And there wasn't a lot of insight to take away from it. And I think for that reason, I was optional also.
Gotcha. Yeah, Michael Novak notes that, there's a lot of data here, which is kind of cool. 80,000 consumers, 800,000 consumption moments, right? But
optional. I'm putting up his vote in our
optional.
Yes, I was just going to get there. Yes, but optional. I think it's fascinating. Go ahead.
You're right, guys. I like the question about how they're using gamers and where are they putting the personalization. How are they engaging with the customers? It wasn't clear. So for that reason, maybe we should go optional.
Yeah, but let's go optional. One of the things that's fascinating is that in our wins framework, when we talk about high leverage areas that are digital, that are wins, and this notion of the relationship of the brand to the consumer, I think is huge, because there's a fascinating study done about Coca-Cola where they put people in an fMRI machine and gave them branded and unbranded soda, and it was both things were Coca-Cola, but when they knew they were drinking the branded drink, their pleasure centers actually lit up more than simply with the Coca-Cola without the brand associated with it. So this is serious in terms of pleasure on the part of the customer. Has a lot to do with the brand as well as the special formula and so forth. So, really interesting domain, but optional. All right. Yes, and I think Mars also. Michael says, "Hey, look, Mars is super competitive. They're super secretive as well. They've had to open up over the years because they weren't getting the talent that they wanted. They're a big client of PwC, but you didn't hear that from me because Mars Brothers don't like anybody knowing that. Okay. All right. Boy, I hope this isn't simply Friday fatigue where we're getting looser, but I think we've got some really good stuff here. We got the Essential coming up with Lamini Memory with Momi or Mome. And we have Important with BT as a great example of rolling out Q and good data on productivity of developers. The ability of Adelaide Bank and Bendigo to work with MongoDB to make data more available, get past our data debt. And, these are pretty interesting and the rest optional. So with that, anything from our team in terms of what our audience needs to know?
All right. Have a great weekend. Yeah.
Have a great weekend.
One little plug for myself. I will be featured in Entrepreneur Magazine next week because of my use of Perplexity for my content marketing business that is focused on tech specifically. So I will share that little blurb when it comes along.
That's wonderful. Congratulations, David. That's great. We'll certainly do that. And then the other thing is don't forget to watch for David's weekly cartoon, which is always fun. And maybe we can feature some of that in upcoming reviews of the news. All right. With that, have a great weekend, everybody. Take care. I'll talk to y'all soon.
And happy